Okay, I know I'm filming from my car, but I just read the most based article and I want to share it with you. One of the things I talk about a lot on Blue Sky is how the day of accountability is coming. A post-Trump era is coming, and everybody who is collaborating with this regime now, who is willing to do illegal things to prop up this regime, either in order to cozy up to power or to profit themselves in some way, they will face accountability for their illegal actions, for their collaboration with fascism when the rule of law is restored. Now, I'm not the only person saying this. Indivisible has been saying this. A number of prominent journalists and lawyers have been saying this as well. And I completely agree with Knitting Cult Lady, who talks about how Trump is a cult of personality, right? MAGA is a cult of personality based around Trump. And we know that cults of personality, they don't survive the demise of their leader. And Trump is an old man. He escaped accountability from Merrick Garland's hesitant DOJ, but he cannot escape the passage of time. And if you think J.D. Vance or any of Trump's children have the charisma to capture the American public, to capture anybody from MAGA, please. But speaking of accountability for collaborators in the post-Trump era, I want to talk about this article from the New Republic that was fucking fantastic. It's called, I'm sorry, I've got to read from my car here. It's called, "Let's Start Talking About Jail Time for Trump and His MAGA Enablers." This article is by Jason Linkins, and it was originally published in Power Mad. Trump is the head of a criminal syndicate, and he should be treated accordingly. Okay, now I know I have reading glasses on the top of my head, but my computer's so far away, I got to put back on my regular glasses to read it. What's in the water in Maryland? Whatever it is, it's certainly more invigorating than the sewage that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his grandchildren have been swimming in. A few weeks ago, one of the old line states senators, Chris Van Hollen, dropped his gloves to take on President Donald Trump's unlawful banishment and imprisonment of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This week, his House colleague Kwesi Mfume was responding to an administration flirting with suspending the habeas rights of its citizens in stark but welcome terms. It's a damn shame to continue to see what's happening to our nation under the guise of this Trump administration and his Department of Government evil, he said. He and Elon Musk, really, in my opinion, deserve to be arrested and charged with assault on the Constitution. So real quick here, one of the things that Ezra from Indivisible has been advocating for is for any of us with Democratic electeds to be pressuring them to let their Republican colleagues know, hey, y'all are breaking the law. Y'all are failing to uphold your oath to the Constitution. You're betraying the American people, and a day of accountability is coming for you. And we also need to be pushing Democrats that when they regain control of the House and the Senate, they must have accountability for all of those who are breaking the law now. That must be their number one priority. Because we saw what happened during the Biden administration when the Merrick Garland DOJ failed to aggressively pursue justice and accountability. That's why we're living this horror show now. Okay, back to the article. One of the more unfortunate realities of the Trump era is that to speak the plain truth about it requires you get over the feeling that you're being shrill or alarmist. I know that it might sound crazy and ludicrous, Mfume said, commenting on his call to arrest the president and his pet oligarch. As someone who spent the past few years issuing Cassandra-like warnings only to watch so many of my ostensible industry peers take a dive, I can relate. But the thing about Cassandra is that she's correct, and so is Mfume. Trump isn't a president. He's the head of a criminal syndicate, and he should be treated accordingly. Now, and even more importantly, when he and his accomplices are finally out of power. Trump 2.0 has been a remarkable speed run into lawlessness, a testament to the fact that there might have actually been some adults in the room during his first term, during which time he still fomented an insurrection and got impeached twice, by the way. Now, freed from those guardrails that were once upstanding, he's rocketed to a new level of infamy. I once held that George W. Bush's reign was much more costly than Trump's. No longer. His return has truly been a thing apart. As TNR's Alex Shepard documented this week, Trump's trip to the Gulf states has been a vertically integrated grift in which the president has racked up more corporate enterprises than most politicians manage in their entire careers. This week's skullduggery is, of course, just one brief crime spree among many. You know, like Trump's $400 million Qatari airplane that initially he said was a gift from Qatar, but now they're like, no, his people came to us. So once again, another classic Trump shakedown, just like he did with all of the big law firms that capitulated to him. It's a shakedown. Over at The Nation, Jeb Lund lays down the lengthy rap sheet that Trump has written for himself in his first 100 days. The Trump administration has heisted the private data of millions of Americans, unlawfully terminated thousands of federal employees, extorted law firms and businesses and broadcasters, and they're gaming the markets, raking in corrupt money with crypto tokens, kidnapping people and exiling them to foreign prisons without due process, and much, much more. As Lund notes, the question is not whether Trump and his people committed a crime, while I read you that last sentence, but how many? It shouldn't come as a surprise that the Trump administration is canceling the FBI's investigations into white-collar criminals. Oh, him and his buddies. But if these sorts of crimes aren't dramatic enough for you, we could also simply stick with the good old-fashioned manslaughter. As TNR's Matt Ford reported this week, one of the hallmarks of Trump's public health policies is that they will kill a lot of children. I have been talking about this since January. And it gets worse. Every week, it gets worse. More and more children are dying as a result of what Trump and Elon Musk and RFK Jr. are doing. That's probably not a surprise given the aforementioned Kennedy is well known for directing officials in Samoa to run an open-air eugenics experiment that killed 83 kids. The net effect of these policy changes, Ford writes, is to make this country a more dangerous place for Americans to give birth and grow up. I know that this country has a long history of discriminating against kids, treating kids as less than human. It's not a great scene to be a child in America under the best of circumstances. But please understand what this regime is doing is an all-out attack on our children. Kids are going without health care. Kids are going hungry. Kids are getting sick. Kids are dying. Kids are being denied access to education. What Trump is doing is killing children. Here in the United States and also around the world, millions of children are dying as a direct result of what this regime is doing. And the article's going to talk about that next. Great minds think alike. Abroad, Trump administration policies have the same eugenicist bent. As TNR contributor James North chronicled, the gutting of PEPFAR, the Bush-era HIV/AIDS intervention program that saved countless lives in Africa, was one of the most highly regarded U.S. policies the world over. Trump canceling that, Elon Musk canceling that, has already sentenced tens of thousands of people in Africa to death. And each week that passes while the program is stuck in limbo, thousands of needless deaths will follow. I have been shouting for months that this regime is eugenicist. Fascism and eugenics go hand in hand. Trump has intentionally put people within his administration that are eugenicist. RFK Jr., Elon Musk, J.D. Vance. But also, let's not forget that these eugenicist actions, they're not just killing innocent people, vulnerable people, but they're also undercutting our power as a nation on the global stage. The administration's approach to PEPFAR is a piece with a range of policy decisions that will, in the best case scenario, cede soft power space to China and others to secure the developing world's regard for stepping into a vacuum and providing humanitarian assistance. Right? All of these countries that we withdrew our humanitarian programs from, guess what? Who's going to be their hero now? Who's going to give them aid now and build loyalty and relationships? China. But of course, the worst case scenario is naturally millions of needless deaths. These people are dying. A couple of months ago, I called what Elon Musk is doing by canceling all of these USAID programs a holocaust against the world's poorest children, and I stand by that. Back in March, the New York Times' Nicholas Kristof, who's an Oregonian, attempted to quantify the harms done by the Trump administration's decimation of foreign aid agencies in terms of lives lost. Here were his calculations back in March. 1.65 million deaths from AIDS. 500,000 deaths from a lack of vaccines, 550,000 from a lack of food aid, and approximately 300,000 each from a lack of malaria and tuberculosis prevention, respectively. Save the Children said that at least 1.2 million children were going to starve to death because of what Musk did. Okay, I can see that I'm going to have to break this into 2 videos because I can only film for 10 minutes on TikTok. So if Trump is doing all of these horrible illegal things, if we know that he's breaking the law on literally a daily basis, if we know that innocent lives are being lost because of the illegal actions that this regime is taking, if we know there's all kinds of grift and corruption, then the author is saying, why aren't we talking about accountability? And I want to talk about that in the next video. There's a little bit more of the article and then I have some analysis, so please come back for part 2. Let's start talking about jail time for Trump and his MAGA enablers. Trump is the head of a criminal syndicate and he should be treated accordingly. That is the title of an article that was published on May 17th in the New Republic. It's by Jason Lincolns, and it originally appeared in Power Mad. And if you want to go back and watch my first video, I read quite a bit of the article, and it laid out a number of the illegal actions that Trump and his cronies have undertaken since the beginning of this regime in January. The author, Jason Lincolns, references a piece from The Nation by Jeb Lund that talks about some of the things Trump did in his first 100 days that are potentially or definitely illegal. Heisted the private data of millions of Americans, terminated thousands of federal employees illegally, it's tens of thousands, extorted law firms and businesses and broadcasters, gaming the stock market, raking in corrupt money with crypto tokens, kidnapping people and exiling them to foreign prisons without due process, and much more. The last part that I shared was about the humanitarian cost. Now, the author calls this manslaughter on a massive scale. Cutting USAID programs is actively killing millions of people. Most of them are the world's poorest children, by the way. What was that Jesus said? Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do it unto me. All of you Christian Trumpers who are like, well, these countries should take care of their own. We take care of our own, they take care of their own. We're not taking care of our own in the United States. Our children here are also dying. They're also going hungry. They're also being denied an education. They're also being denied medical care. And it's going to get worse if Republicans in Congress have their way with Trump's big, beautiful bill or whatever the fuck he calls it. The poorest children in America will lose access to medical care. They will go hungry. Cuts to Medicaid and SNAP benefits are going to impact our children here in this country. So I don't want to hear a goddamn word from Trump or Christians about how we need to take care of our own here in America and not focus on kids around the world. First of all, that's not what Jesus said. Actively withdrawing food, medical care, funding for the world's poorest. I'm pretty sure that goes directly against what Jesus said when he talked about the goats and the sheep, right? The righteous sheep, they cared for the poor. They clothed the poor. They visited them in prison. They cared for them when they were sick. They fed them. And by doing all of that, they were caring for Jesus. The goats, they didn't do any of that. And so, you know what? Jesus said, be gone. He was like, get away from me. I never knew you. Okay, I'm sorry to get on a little bit of a tangent there, but so many Christian Trumpers keep defending the cuts to USAID. I understand that they worship the golden calf, the orange Cheeto calf of Donald Trump. They don't actually understand the Bible and they don't actually live out any of those ethics. But then they try to say, well, we need to take care of our own here in the US, but they're not doing that either. They're actively making sure that the poorest Americans, little children, are denied all of the basic things that they need. They're actively supporting suffering for American children so that a few rich oligarchs can get even richer. Don't really know where in the Bible Jesus said withhold basic necessities from children and disabled folks so that the rich can get even more bloated and hoard even more money. And I said in the last video that way back in February, I called what Elon Musk was doing with all of these USAID cuts and the way that hundreds of thousands of people are going to die from no more tuberculosis and AIDS medication, the way that children are starving, the way that children will be dying from a lack of clean water and medical care. I said, why is that not a holocaust against the world's poorest, against the world's children? And the author here said the same thing. This all raises an interesting question. How many people have to die before the word Holocaust is in play? I'm not gunning for shock value here, at least not solely. I want to suggest that there is a certain necessary logic to what has to follow corrupt misrule of this kind. Tribunals, trials, and punishment. Prison, and the running to ground and defunding of the entire Trump syndicate. I've been using the term accountability, but that is much more explicit as to what that means. It's an undertaking that will require no small amount of courage, and it will break a long-standing status quo that has favored absolution of numerous mortal sins, from the Bush administration's unlawful torture network to Wall Street's ruination of the economy to the many costly foreign misadventures that have feathered the nests of the military-industrial complex over the years. Look forward, not backward ways etched into the civic firmament have served us poorly. In retrospect, what we had to look forward to was this exact moment with this perfidious administration. That's exactly what I said. The hesitancy of the Merrick Garland DOJ, the Biden hands off, the members of Congress being unwilling to push for accountability the first time around, and the long-standing history of that behavior that has led us to this moment. Trump has gotten away with all of this shit and has now installed himself as a dictator precisely because the system, our government, failed to hold him accountable for his previous illegal actions. The sweep it under the rug mentality, the let's just pretend this didn't happen and move forward. That is how you empower and enable fascists like Trump. Because they know they can get away with it. And let's not forget how much of a significant role the Supreme Court played in empowering the behavior that we're seeing now. Real accountability is not something I expect will be popular with the rotted mass media and its grotesque aversion to good governance, or the wholly out-of-touch pundit class, whose opinions on Trumpian corruption tend to lag years behind most functional adults. This is where the avatars of, quote, let the bad guys off the hook and move on, end quote, obtained their intellectual cover over the years. Suffice it to say, they'll like a better world wrought from taking these criminals down and locking them up just fine. But those who want to pursue justice for all of those wronged by this administration should expect to be branded as heretical. The American political machine has been allergic to accountability for a long, long time. We hear so much about, quote, the rule of law these days. So many people are concerned about it. They just don't know what's going to happen to it. Even among the gravely worried, there is a sense that, quote, the rule of law is like a machine someone turned on at some point in the past, which runs in the background of American life like some sort of ambient presence. What the rule of law actually is, it turns out, is the sum total of our deeds and our inaction. The rule of law lives or dies on our willingness to act, occasionally with grim resolve. It's time for people who value justice to screw their courage to the sticking place. Absolutely. Lincoln's is saying all of the things that we need to be hearing. We need to be having frank discussions about what happens in the post-Trump era. We need to be preparing now for the accountability that must come. I also think he makes a really good point here that the establishment folks are going to be resistant to getting accountability. We watched how hard they failed the first time around during Trump 1.0. We watched the Merrick Garland DOJ slow roll justice because they prioritized deference for Trump's position as a former president to an extent that justice was denied the American people. One of my kids who's taking a poli-sci class in college was talking to me about how politics doesn't actually prioritize doing what's right or legal or scientific. It just prioritizes what's popular, what gets votes and public support. Which is why it's so important that there is a mass public support for accountability, because we know that politicians are not going to do the right thing if it might risk them getting reelected. We know that politicians don't want to take risks in general, and so that is why they are really hesitant to seek accountability. Also, they know if they do something shady, they want their colleagues to kind of scratch their backs, right, and kind of give them a pass as well. It's a whole system that is set to protect the folks within it, and thereby denying justice for the American people. So what would it look like to pressure our electeds right now to set themselves up to pursue accountability after this regime is done? What would it look like for us, the American people, to normalize our expectation that accountability must be coming? How would we do that? What would that look like? Because I know the minute that the Democrats get back in power in Congress, there is going to be a huge hesitancy from them to pursue justice. I know there are plenty of Democrats who will aggressively do that. They have said already, like Congressman Mfume, like Jamie Raskin, like so many others, that they are ready to pursue justice because they are committed to upholding the Constitution. They are committed to their oath to the American people. But so many others are going to want to kind of sweep this under the rug. Imagine what would have happened if the Nuremberg trials had never been carried out. Could you imagine if there had not been an international criminal tribunal for Slobodan Milosevic? What is the future of America going to look like when we hold these folks accountable for what they're doing now? And what will it look like internationally? Because the reality is what Trump and Elon Musk and RFK Jr. are doing, it's killing people all around the world. What's that process going to look like, and how are we, the American people, going to advocate for accountability, for justice? How do we game that out right now? How do we already start ourselves on the path toward justice and accountability for what is happening right now? If we can't stop it right now, how do we make sure that we can have accountability when it's all over?